Welcome to Demon School. Iruma-kun is easily one of the best shonen anime and manga currently running, and that's in part because of just how charming it is, I wanna fuck Iruma, as well as how well handled and well written it is. Iruma slowly directed his large member towards the crevice that was my anus. Even though the show consistently does things that I hate, like incessant narration, over-explanation of things occurring, bloated recaps every episode, and constantly repeating the point over and over again, it's just so goddamn charming that I'm willing to forgive it, unlike most shows that don't have anything going for them and are just annoying with it. At least until she does this. It manages to accomplish this not by having the best animation in the industry, as it's quite literally a fucking still frame half the time, but by instead having fun, loving, and innocent characters that appeal to even the most heartless of monsters. But I'd still fuck Claire. The first season definitely has its issues, as the first two episodes aren't especially indicative of how the rest of the show is, and one of the arcs later on is pretty hit or miss, but I'd hit a Mary. In a sexual way. But it's one of those shows that continues to get better and better as it goes on, as the story may be simple, considering it's about a human who gets placed in a demon world and then silly antics ensue, and that's pretty much the entire thing, but there's loads of foreshadowing for later arcs in the first season, as well as the seasons that follow after, and furthermore, it takes full advantage of its fantastical setting and what that would look and function like, while playing with your expectations by having it function more or less like the human world, only to then turn that on its head later when it reminds you that it's not the human world and that these are demons. The writing contributes to that by not only directing you one way so that you can be surprised later on, but also by keeping everything fresh and fun with the help of consistent pacing and comedic timing. The animation, though, as said, is practically non-existent, and more often than not, they're just zooming in on a still image to give it the illusion of movement. But it still moves more than Record of Ragnarok. And while the writing more than makes up for that, I can't deny that having a lack of unique direction or any real standout animation, though the art itself is immaculate, like something like Fire Force, is to its detriment and holds it back from being the objective best shonen anime that it should be. I take it back. That said, it's a testament to all its other moving parts that it's able to be as good as it is despite all the shortcuts in its production, and Iruma himself is definitely a contributor to that, as if you somehow hate this character or have anything negative to say about him, you have definitive shit taste. I don't make the rules. It's practically impossible to hate someone this adorable, where he manages to be best boy and girl while being wholesome all the while, as his charm supersedes the show and infects the audience themselves, which is the result of top-tier writing, because you now intrinsically understand just how he's able to win the other characters over, because he's already done so with you. The rest of the class feeds off of Iruma and stands out in their own way, particularly Clara, Ass, and all of the Misfit class, plus Best Girl, and this weird dog. Because they contribute to making up what is primarily a comedy show mixed perfectly with serious action in the same vein as Fire Force and Jujutsu Kaisen, but with the darker aspects dialed down to zero outside of Iruma's really fucked up parents. Is he eating grass? Almost everything in the show is played for jokes. Its real ability comes from being able to circumvent your expectations despite that, as Senpai, for example, is one of the main antagonists and starts out with the traditional tragic shonen backstory where you think he's a bad guy because he was bullied, but in reality, he's actually pretty twisted and sadistic and is evil solely because he's a demon, something that is always inherently present in the show, but that you quickly forget about because of how bright, cheery, and colorful everything is, and it serves to show you that, despite the presentation, demons are still demons, and that although the show can be funny and charming, it can also be just as serious when it wants to. Why are you not playing the serious scenes? That said, Season 1 as a whole, however, does suffer from the writing being in its early stages, as well as the adaptation itself. While it is continually good after the second episode, it kinda takes a dip during Senpai's arc, also known as the Battler arc, wherein the entire thing is just rather poorly paced. It is the show's first serious arc that tries to touch on more personal character writing and be more in-depth with it than just silly gags and Iruma being Iruma, and while it does succeed at this, it stumbles its way through, making for a so-so viewing experience, especially when they do it perfectly in the very next arc. And also, Senpai sucks. In a span of like 2 minutes, you're able to learn that Chrome, the focal character of the 2-episode arc that follows, is spiteful towards her mother for never giving her a happy face stamp that's fucking adorable, which makes her mom come off as spiteful, but then you realize that this adorable little dork just missed the point that she needed to be better with her control over magic because it's always firing at 100%, and you see the negative effects of that later on in the episodes when the crowd goes wild because of it. However, at the same time, you also
start to think that maybe the mom could have been more vocal about it, but then if she was, would Chroma tried as hard as she did, and is that really her fault, or is it just good parenting?
In the span of like 3 minutes, did I just say that? It was more thought-provoking, charming, and funny than the entire 8-episode prior arc. It's less so that they failed with Senpai, and more so that they just didn't have a good grasp on the pacing yet, which caused a lot of bumps along the way, and it certainly didn't help that Season 1 is more introductory and less goal-driven than later seasons because it matches Iruma's current mindset. And that's to the benefit of the show, and on its own is not an inherent negative, but it can be when combined with the other detractors, but boy golly, do they perfect it in Season 2! It starts by firing on all cylinders, and with the exception of the first episode of Walter Park, every episode is damn near perfect, with Evil Iruma easily being my favorite, and not just because I'm horny, as the pacing never lets up and the story starts to find its footing as Iruma gets a grasp on what he wants to do by raising his rank and protecting his friends, settling in on calling the demon world home, and also developing his relationships further with more characters like Ameri, who, alongside Iruma, easily gets the most from the writing this season, because she could fucking crush me, please, mommy! But the rest of the Misfits get a chance to shine too, in a way that's arguably much better handled in Season 3, and you start to notice that, rather than subverting all the classic shonenisms like something like Demon Slayer would, it instead opts to embody them without making it obnoxious while still sticking to its core theme, making it, thus far, the best season of Iruma and a solid 9 out of 10, with really only the poor production values holding it back, though that's not to say the adaptation doesn't try to add its own flair, as the OST is excellent, as is the lighting and coloring, and God, I wish you'd carry me like that. Unfortunately though, Season 3 doesn't live up to the hype of Season 2, and while still good, it can certainly be a huge step down from the previous seasons if you don't vibe with the rest of the Misfit class. The writing for them is well handled in the second season, but it kind of falls flat here in Season 3, with the exception being the first few episodes leading up to the Harvest Festival, the arc that more or less makes up the entire season. But no matter how objectively good that writing is, if you don't personally vibe with, say, Jazz and this Lion Guy, then you're gonna absolutely hate an episode entirely focused on them. Is that his face? It certainly didn't help that while the season seemed to be taking a turn for the better in terms of the production, what with how the character art was more fine, the shadows were thicker, the animation was more expressive, and the OST changed to suit the new arc, on top of the title cards being altered as well, and Clara making my dick confused, it turned out to be a whole lot of nothing, as it's largely on autopilot despite those initial impressions, and returns to more of the same, if not worse, than previous seasons. Did her shoes just fucking move? Specifically, there's a lot more recaps, shown explaining of everything that happens, to the point where it's practically Jujutsu Kaisen, and that's not a good thing, and the pacing is a lot slower in general to fit the arc into the entire season, whilst also giving extended segments dominated largely by side characters, though I don't see the problem personally. The stuff you get is fine, but it's too much extended arbitrary side character interactions to really live up to its full potential, thus leaving it as potentially one of the weakest of the 3 seasons. It's so unfair! Why? While the writing may still be good, these issues prevent it from being the best it could have been, and even if an Iruma on autopilot still exudes hella charm, fuck you, I'm biased, it's still a step down from Season 2, but there's no denying that, when viewed as a whole of all its seasons, and even when broken down into its individual moving parts, it's one of the best currently running shonen anime, and had it gotten a better adaptation with better visuals, it'd have easily been #1. Just like this video here.